Okay guys, back at repairing another Gottlieb System 3 issue, and these are just a pretty simple coil repair issue, but I'll show you kind of how I get through it. A couple neat things, tricks along the way. So this one, I have a ball popper issue, which is a real an issue on this coil here on a Gottlieb, and right here, I tested the diode. Really, to test a diode on the coil, you got to cut one end off. I just cut it off. Once I do, I always replace it just in case. But I did take that diode off, and it tested okay. I tested this little guy right here, and it tested fine. I'm going to put a new one on there because I keep them. I think it's a 1N 4004 diode. So at any rate, they're a dime a dozen. You should always have those in your toolbox just in case. But one other thing I like to do on these is make sure the coil isn't bad. There's a few different ways you can do it. One thing I can do is you just measure the coil resistance. I'll show you that here in a second. Okay, one handy thing in the Gottlieb System 3s is they always put coil charts, and they're usually on a little pocket on the inside of the game. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not, but this one happened to be there, and I find these pretty helpful because I don't have to go digging in my manual very far because I know the coil I'm looking at's right here. It's a 19300. That you can find that right on the coil wrapper. So if I go right over here, 19300. So I know which coil I'm looking at. I go back to this coil chart. There it is. Here's the resistance in ohms. So if your coil's bad, it's going to show, there's going to be a little bit of play there, but it's going to show a different resistance. So if your coil's bad, it's gonna be quite a bit more resistance there. So the wrapper color's orange, so we know we're testing the right coil. So let's go back over here. I have a meter here sitting here, and I have it set to 200 ohms, which is fine. And let me I'm doing this one-handed. I do everything one-handed on these videos, so you guys have to bear with me there. I'm gonna try and do this. Give me a second. I probably should just use alligator clips for the sake of this video, but we'll okay, let's take a look. Okay, so you're right there, 7.98 ohms, so that's a good coil. The resistance is good, so we know the coil's not bad. I'll put a diode back on there, and we'll go from there. Okay, next thing to do is I went into the coil test in the game, and I see that coil number 9 doesn't work. And I did write down a few other coils too. So what I always do is I always kind of write them down. What coils don't work? Well, I have a few flashers not working, but I don't suspect this flasher because I didn't change those bulbs, but this one might be bad. I always also note if there's spares. If there's spare unused transistors in the game, Q23 and Q24 aren't even used. I go down here to verify. I always verify when it says that in the test, and sure enough. So those two aren't used, so I can, if you don't have the FET transistor, it's a Mosfet, I think it's a 12L5401, I'll look again. But you can always, if you don't have those, you can always look for spare ones that aren't used. They're in the board, they're soldered in the board, just steal them from there. It's a nice little trick. But we'll go back over here to solenoid 9, which is transistor Q10. And you see it goes through here. Here's your coil and diode, and it goes back through these connectors, back over here. And so I know that I always take a look at that, the way it's written up. But I suspect Q10 is bad, is what I suspect. And I'll pull Q22 or 23, and I'll try it. I have some MOSFETs, but we'll check that out. Then I also noted, what was it? Q18 and Q20. So those other two coils, and you can go down here on this page, which is the wiring schematics diagram parts list, and it'll say playboard schematic diagram. Color codes right there for the wires. So again, 288 is white wire with two red stripes and one red stripe and two gray stripes, right? So you can use the color code to help you out too. Okay, I pulled the driver board out here, and you'll notice on Gottlieb boards, you'll see on here these plastic pegs. That's what the boards are tapped into. They're not screwed into the board. And here's the ones that came on sometimes these break. I bought a bag of these from Steve at Pinball Resource, but probably more important to buy from Steve at Pinball Resource is this little guy. Circuit board extraction tool, part number 18131. If you tell Steve you want one of these, he's got them. I think his are white. I always ordered a couple. I buy them for friends when I order because they're super cheap. It looks like the end of a ballpoint pen, and really it's pretty slick. I always find these cards in every System 3 game that I see, and they're always empty. This tool's gone. These are super easy to lose. I put green tape on it so I can find it easily. Otherwise, this looks like a piece of heat shrink just laying in a bucket or something. But I put these on there every time so I know where they're at. But essentially, all you do is it just goes over the top of that, depresses the tab on there, and then you can pull the board off. A lot of people just use needle nose pliers, and then they end up messing these things up pretty bad. So again, another little tip: give that Steve at Pinball Research that part number. These things are really cheap. I always order one or two and give them away as friends, and very handy tool. Okay, here it is on the bench here, guys, and I've got my I've got a desoldering station here, so makes it pretty easy work. These things are great because you can control temperature, and this is a pretty inexpensive one. This is a Diode 701A. I've had this for years. It works great, but I also have a Hacko. But this one's here on the bench, so I'm going to use that one today. But I go down here to Q10, and I pulled this transistor. I tested it on the board, and it tested pretty good. These are kind of hard to test, and they don't always tell you, these Mosfet transistors. The Mosfets are IRL 530s, and there's also there's a replacement one you can buy, and I can't off the top remember, but you can look there. And so here I've already pulled Q23, but really we're testing Q10. And so what I like to do is I like to flip the board over, mark that transistor there. You can see the one I removed there. Whoops, sorry. With a little dot from a Sharpie, so I know I don't remove the wrong one. Someone had done some repair just below that, and it didn't look like it was very good repair, so I'll be cleaning that up. But you'll see that a lot on circuit boards. But that's the one I changed. And so let's pull out, and I mark these. I mark one just with a Sharpie. It says, whoops, my head's in the way, or my phone's in the way. It says Q10, and then the one with the dot is the spare that I removed. So let's test these here. Put this thing to diode setting. And of course I'm doing this one-handed. Man, this is probably going to be tough. I hadn't thought about it. Hold on, I'll test it a different way. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to test, this one right here is the good one. Well, the presumed good one, the spare. We don't know for sure. But we're going to test this MOSFET, and I get a reading on these two legs of 0.563. Okay. We're going to do the same thing on this leg here, and I get a dead short. So this is Q10, the one with the bad coil, and indeed the MOSFET is bad, so we're going to replace it. And we'll just use this spare right here. We'll just solder that one in, and that's kind of a nice, perk to have when you've got those spare on the board. Okay, I got this thing back in the game, the board, and I put a new diode on here. And real quick, just a quick rundown of this is, I put the diode on, and I did not pay attention to which way the stripe was facing on the diode here. I got to clean that up, but I just soldered this on real quick to test. But one way you can do it is you can look at the wire color here on the so this thing's chewed up. It's purple and black, looks like. Purple, black, and that's the way the stripe is on there. And if you go over here to this, here's the diode right here. Here's the coil. So the diode stripe is facing this side, which is this wire 077. And if you go down here to the code, 0 is black, violet. So I have it on the right way. So let's test this thing and see if it works. So I'm in relay solenoid self-test. I need to go ball shooter. That's what I want. Come on. Let's see if we can get this thing right. Whoops. I hit the wrong button. Okay, here we go. There's ball shooter. Sorry. There it is. Boom. Got it working. So, pretty simple coil test, but those are a lot of the things you'll see on these Gottliebs. So, hope this helps somebody. And thanks.